We all saw the Witcher 3 teaser, trailer, demo, whatever thing yesterday. It was wild, it was crazy, it was breathtaking, it was stunning, and there has been an ocean of people doing the well actually on what they showed. I think for valid reasons, and it's because this whole thing has been framed in a sort of weird way. Some are pointing out that, you know, it looks phenomenal, because it does. But a lot of other people are coming forward and saying, well, they stressed multiple times that this is a tech demo. It is not The Witcher 4. So like Jeff Keighley, for example, got a lot of flack because people were like, he tweeted out first gameplay screenshots of The Witcher 4 or screenshot of The Witcher 4, which this technically is not. And that's confusing because it sure looks like The Witcher 4 and it's from them and it's beautiful. But as you can see in the little text at the very bottom, technical presentation, not actual gameplay, okay? They have the asterisks all over the game, all over the footage. Like even that, I said game. It's not the game, it's a tech demo. And you see little things like you see her hop on the horse, and then you'll see they do a little peel away of the skin of the horse to show how the muscles are contracting and how they simulate all of that. So nobody's thinking that this is like in The Witcher 4 in this same way. What they're doing here is they're showcasing the tech that will power The Witcher 4, but this is a standalone thing, like a separate project that they built to show what they're using to make The Witcher 4. But I don't expect this sequence to be in the game or anything. This terrain is probably going to be totally different. The city that they show in the background, of course, is in the actual universe of The Witcher and is going to be in the game. But in this actual form, probably not. It's going to look totally different. It's going to be different layouts and everything. This has been laid out for the sake of the beautiful presentation to frame it in this really cool way. But still, what is important to take away though, is that what they showed using these tools is beautiful and very impressive. This demo, they claimed and insist, is running on a base PS5. Does the final game look quite like this? Probably not. Probably doesn't look quite this good, but if it looks 90% or even 80% this good, we're still in for a treat, my friends. We're still in for a treat. But you do just have to remember that this is a tale as old as time, that companies show you something phenomenal during a tech demo or tech presentation or even initial trailer, and then they need to walk it back a little bit. The difference is this time they are being very clear with their disclaimers. But to demonstrate this, I pulled up a couple of old clips. So the original debut gameplay trailer for The Witcher 3, this is what it looked like at the time. And we've all played The Witcher 3. We know what it looks like. In that case, I actually like the look of the final game more than the look of what they show in this announcement trailer. This is a pre-rendered cinematic, so it's not the same. But I like the final look of The Witcher 3 way more than this shot. This looks very Witcher 2. The final look of the actual game, I think, improved a good bit from this original gameplay trailer that they revealed in 2013. In my personal opinion, I think it looked even better. And later at 2014's E3, they did do another gameplay demo where they showed another segment of the game that is much closer to the final version, and it's much more familiar. You know, you're in the bog right now. It's very familiar. Things, of course, still ended up changing, shifting. Some of the color work has been redone. Some of the UI has been redone. Like these elements changed, of course, in the final version. But a lot of the animations are the same. A lot of those little things and tidbits remained. Little tweaks were eventually made to like the shadows and the quality there on console at least, but largely this is much closer to what we ended up actually seeing compared to the 2013 version, which looked very different. But it's not just CDPR. This also happens all the time with other games. So for example, yeah, I found a comparison video from Nick930. And in this, he compared the side-by-sides of what they showcased at E3 2018 for The Last of Us Part 2 compared to what's in the actual game. And what's fascinating is that it's the little things. The final version of The Last of Us Part 2 looked phenomenal still, and it still does to this day. But the difference between the E3 demo, the presentation demo, and the final version, they were very small. It was things like the animations were swapped out. Like here. He'll point this out.
Catches her breath here. The camera pans down the street to reveal a new group of scars coming in from a pile of vehicles. This happens in the retail game as well, but if you look closely, you'll notice that their animations are again not nearly as advanced. Ellie then drops to the ground and crawls under the truck, watching as the patrol searches the area for her. Again, the AI is so unpredictable that I wasn't able to get the scene to match up exactly, but all of the actual gameplay mechanics shown off do function mostly the same way. Enemies do search under vehicles, and if they find you, they will pull you out from underneath and trigger a grapple attack. However, the way this Scar reacts when shot in the face appears to be scripted as well, especially considering that a point-blank shot with this same handgun, even without upgrades, turns an enemy's face into a gross paste. After shooting one enemy, Ellie is then grabbed and pulled out from underneath the truck, where she struggles to escape and then shoots the assaulting enemy 3 times in the body, where he reacts realistically to each impact. While this general mechanic still functions roughly the same, the way enemies react isn't nearly as advanced. They still will jerk back and even fall to the knees depending on where you shoot them, but it's just not up to par with the reveal.
It's the little things. It's the little bitty things. And this is why I said when we watched that in that clip we did yesterday, I said most likely, graphically, the game will look very close to this, I think. I mean, I think it's very likely that it does, if not like a little bit better in terms of performance or in terms of sharpness and stuff like that. It's the little things that probably get cut and trimmed. Little things like these paired animations for getting through the crowd. This thing with the guy carrying the crate where she bumps into him, the apples fall, and then the pigs race out to go eat the apple. The kid comes and grabs an apple and steals it. I'd be very, very surprised if that stuff ends up in the game at the end of the day. Now, this is the other piece. Does that mean that The Witcher 4 will be bad? No. It's about understanding what this is. This is a tech demo, and the intention is to showcase cool tools that the devs of The Witcher 4 and other devs that are at this Unreal presentation, it's to showcase what they could do with these tools, what is technically possible with the tools that they have. It's a vertical slice. It is a little tidbit, a proof of concept, a tech demo showing what's possible. Now, there's an old quote. So it's the final game. There's an old quote from Todd Howard that he used back in the development and making of videos, I think for Fallout 3. And in that, Todd said, I tell my developers all the time, we can do anything. We just can't do everything. And that's true. And this is an example of that, where they can do anything, but you sure as hell can't do everything, okay? You can't. You have to pick your battles. And so while this is technically possible that you could have a game where bumping into people drops the crate and causes the apples to fall, I find it funny that the guy just keeps walking and leaves all the apples on the ground. You'd think he would care to stop. But again, it's not the game. Like, the point of this sequence is not to have the AI behave realistically, it's to sell you on what is possible. Yeah, technically it's not a vertical slice. You're right. Thank you for the correction, Layer Cake. It is a vertical slice would be a vertical slice like of the actual game. It is a proof of concept tech demo. You know, the example of maybe more of a vertical slice would be what they showed off. Hold on, God of War. I think it was the announcement actually with the giant, or the troll rather. With this was like a vertical slice. So they built this out, they got it running, and then they took it to E3, but they said then after they had built this, they were like, okay, we have to make a game. We have to turn this into a whole game now, because it was still pretty early on. And so from here, they went and built it out. In the final version of the game, there is no vista, of course. I mean, this is where the troll comes up, like, and the whole thing kind of kickstarts from there. So it ended up changing a lot, you know, whereas the troll in this case breaks the bridge and then it kickstarts this. But do you guys remember this reveal? How people just lost their minds? I thought this was so cool. And I remember thinking, there's no way this is like an actual video game. There's no way this is real, because it looked so freaking good. Oh, those were the days, man. Those were the days. But like, this was more of a vertical slice. Oh, baby. Oh, baby. Oh, it's so good. But, you know, you got to see where the game would eventually end up. The UI, of course, changes and things evolve, but the core components are there. But the goal of this was to sell you on the game. The goal of the Witcher 4 tech demo is to sell you on the engine. And those are fundamentally different goals. You know, it's a fundamentally different thing they're trying to do. So while each of these components is technically possible in The Witcher 4, I still would not expect, like, when they showed the NPCs interacting at the with the fishmonger, for example, where they're talking.
And there is tons of tech at play here. Even in a simple market stall, metahuman tools, improved Unreal smart objects, chaos cloth, and more.
Yeah, and all of this exists to make sure that the gap in quality between Ciri and NPCs is as small as possible.
Like, I'm sure this is all, you know, very specifically captured or motion captured, and it's specifically put in this, and it is impressive to still be running at all, for sure, in real time. But again, to expect that in the final version of The Witcher 4, you can walk up to like any fishmonger's stall in the game and they'll interact with NPCs dynamically in this way, like, that's where we start to get a little bit silly. You know, that's when it's the expectations are out of whack. And here's the deal. Like, so some people might be like, well, then what's the point of showcasing this? I think this was the deal from the beginning. Okay, when CDPR agreed to partner with Epic Games and Unreal for the engine work on The Witcher 4 and all of their future projects, I think the deal was pretty simple. Epic and Unreal, they will work to build out tools, they'll work on optimizations, they'll work with CDPR to turn the engine into what they need it to be to make these games. And in exchange, they get to use The Witcher 4 as like a showcase piece to sell the engine to other developers, and they get to use their feedback to make the engine better. But I think these types of tech showcases were always part of the deal. So if they were just trying to sell The Witcher 4, I don't think they would like necessarily be doing this, because I think that this is going to be harder to meet expectation wise. But I think this was always part of the deal. With The Witcher 4 and this tech demo, the goal is not to sell you necessarily on the game. The goal is to sell the engine to other developers. And I think they're doing a good job of it. I think if anything, this maybe not, I mean, honestly, may not be the best thing for them when it comes to selling The Witcher 4 long term, because it's going to be hard to like walk some of this back. You know, like some of this, I think people, even though they've stressed it's just a tech demo, people will still be expecting fishmongers to behave this way. People will still be expecting to bump into apple, you know, people carrying apple crates and see kids and pigs run up to grab them. You know, like I still think even though they are trying to be very, very clear, this is a tech demo, there still will be people with those expectations. And realistically, those things probably are not going to be in the final game, which is still okay. The game could still be amazing, but this is why we say hype can get out of control. Hype can ruin the joy you might feel for something. Because if you're expecting a 10 out of 10 and it's a 9.5 out of 10, you still feel disappointed, you know? Even though the game is still phenomenal, you still are disappointed because it's not where you thought it would be. You know, let's see. Digital Foundry also did a little reaction video talking about some of the tech specifically. So let's see what they had to say. We probably won't watch the whole thing of this because we have the state of play here in a little bit, but let's see what they had to say.
Hello there, and welcome to a DF Direct mini special. We're bringing you this one in the wake of Unreal Fest 2025, kicking off with a keynote presentation showing a remarkable Unreal Engine 5.6 demonstration using assets from the forthcoming game, The Witcher 4. Joining me to discuss it, our resident
So you're saying this is The Witcher 4? No.
Unreal Engine 5 expert, Alex Battaglia.
Yes. I've been dunking on Unreal for so long that it's nice to actually talk about something positive for once, right?
Well, to be fair, I mean, it is a pretty astonishing engine, but
It is.
Obviously there have been flaws. And this demonstration, remarkable in many ways because, well, we'll get onto it later, I guess, but it's addressing some of those flaws that we've discussed in the past. Seemingly, it's exciting stuff. So I guess before we kick off on this, full disclosure, we're actually going to be attending a presentation at CD Projekt Red to get more details on this. So necessarily...
Ooh, that's my face when I found out about that. You're going to CDPR? Interesting. Mind using subtitles? Sure, yeah. I can do that for you. I got that for you, baby. I can do that.
Necessarily, we're going to be keeping our speculation to a minimum on this, simply because why should we speculate when we're going to find out from the horse's mouth exactly what's going on with this thing? But it certainly looks impressive. Alex, first impression.
I still insist, by the way, I think that they should release this as a playable little mini showcase demo, kind of like the Matrix thing. You remember they dropped the Matrix demo? Drop that, let people see this can actually run in real time. It's like there's no gameplay here. Like you walk Siri forward and then it's over. But I think if they could actually get to the point where like they could show it running in real time, I think that would impress even more people, you know?
Impressions.
I guess the first impressions was, wow, this is running on a base PS5, which was not necessarily my expectations of what this demo would have been. Initially, when we got wind about it beforehand, I was initially thinking it would be another PC demo because CD Projekt Red tends to demo all of their stuff on PC before release for all their games and keeps the consoles almost hidden to the very last second. But I think this implies a little bit that they, unlike titles of the past, where they've struggled at the end right before release to bring those console versions to a good level of quality, that they're now focusing on it right from the get-go. And that was shown out all throughout the demo, which was, running at 60 FPS.
And I think this is really important to like double up on, and I haven't heard enough people talk about this. The fact that they are focusing on PS5 base performance during development, I think is a really good sign for final performance and optimization. Because it's a lot easier to like raise the ceiling on performance than it is to try to bring the floor up. You know, like I think one of the problems with Cyberpunk was that for so long they had all of these systems running and they could run on a high-end PC or like a 1X that they had the game running on. But the moment you tried to play it on base consoles, the game fell apart. And we saw it at launch. I mean, the PS4 and Xbox One versions of the game were horrible for Cyberpunk 2077. Terrible. And they knew that during development, but because they had developed it for the highest end and then tried to pull everything down, it just didn't work. It's way easier to have it perform well on the weaker hardware and then try to add bells and whistles on the back end later in development. And I think that this is a good thing if they want to avoid further trouble, you know?
Mm-hmm. Impressive stuff. I guess the question we need to address first of all, and it's the question that was asked of me pretty much directly after the presentation finished. The plausibility factor. Is this actually running on a base PlayStation 5 or not?
I mean, I don't know how they could possibly lie about that. You know, like if they lie about it, we will find out eventually. And that seems like, you know, you can smile all you want. Mr. Unreal, did you lie about that running on a base PS5? No. I don't think you can get away with that. I don't think any of your silver tongue sweet talking will get you out of that, sir. I don't think it will. So I think there's no way they could just lie about it. There's no way.
Right. I'm just going to say yes right from the get-go right there. And there's a lot of contributing reasons to believe CD Projekt Red, as well as Epic and Unreal Engine. Well, for one, Epic is putting their reputation on the line by doing this as the center piece showcase at Unreal Fest. If they were lying, that'd be a pretty big thing. Both.
Yeah, that'd be a huge. I don't know if you could sue them or developers could sue them or something for false advertising, but surely there's something they could do. I also don't know why. I mean, even just symbolically, lift up the curtain on the black, like the black curtain on the table, lift up the curtain and show the base PS5 plugged in, like with the cables running off behind stage. Just show that. It could even be like a dummy and the actual PS5 is backstage, but just showing the console, I think would have been a really cool way to reveal it instead of just being like, yeah, I promise. You know, it's all that showmanship, baby.
Both for their investors as well as the very serious contracts from the people who are buying the engine to use it and using it, paying money. But regarding the presentation of it itself, there's a lot of aspects of it where you can see flaws that you wouldn't imagine they would put in there for the purpose of showing a PC version of the game. We had access, everyone was watching this either on the stream or after the fact on YouTube.
I still think they should reveal like a
Amito J donated $9.99 through Super Chat.
Thank you.
Luke, did you reacted to Witcher 4 tech demo?
Yeah, we have like the full thing up on this channel, Luke Stevens Live, so you can go watch it. Because right after it happened, I sat down and was like, I wish I had streamed this. This could have been really cool. But I filmed it. It actually is like our top performing stream clip of the last 10. So it's done very, very well. It's done very well. But yeah, you can go watch my full live reaction because I didn't watch it before we reacted to it. But as of this right now, this is a reaction to a reaction of it. So it's like double layered. Bada bing, bada boom.
And a lot of the re-uploads were of a 30 FPS stream, which wasn't very nice, to be honest with you. It would have been nice if that was also 60. But
I think they should release the full, like, uncompressed 100 gigabyte download of this presentation of this gameplay, or like I said, reveal and release the demo like
Zach
as an Unreal
Michaelis donated
project or something.
$20 through Super Chat.
Thank you.
I think of that Witcher 4 tech demo as the same as the Unreal Engine 5 PS5 demo. It's cool, but my expectations are low for CD Projekt Red. Witcher 3 and Cyberpunk were both a mess at launch. I'll wait.
Oh, wait and see. Yeah, the only thing I think that a lot of people are relying on to like save the hope is the performance of Phantom Liberty at launch, which was fantastic. I mean, that Phantom Liberty expansion is phenomenal. So I think people looking at that have more confidence in him, but it's absolutely true and fair that The Witcher 3, which people forget because it kind of popped off later, but The Witcher 3 was a mess at launch. They even joked about it, like Roach was so buggy that Roach would clip onto building rooftops. Booyah! Onto building rooftops, and then they made a Gwent card out of it because it was so prevalent as a bug. It's crazy.
Oh no, it's Retro donated $10.
Thank you.
Speaking of performance and graphical fidelity for game engines, do you think that Rockstar's Rage is better or worse than UE5?
For I mean, they're just different. They're just different. Like Epic and Unreal, they have the advantage of making something that is very, very comparatively user-friendly. It is not proprietary. It's open to pretty much anybody to use. And because it's so open, it's taught in universities. So people immediately, the moment they graduate from college, they often know how to use the engine, which is a huge advantage compared to a proprietary tool set. And, you know, Epic is investing tons into it. It's a very different thing. They have a big asset store. They have all sorts of things, but yeah, they're just different. I think they have their own strengths, their own weaknesses, but you know, Rage tends to be very CPU intensive, so higher end performance is really tricky to optimize for on the console side, and so they're just different. They're different, but I mean, nobody's going to take anything away from Rage. Rage is an amazing piece of tech. It's crazy. It's crazy. Eric, thank you for that money. Now watch the whole Witcher video. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sorry.
The 60 FPS asset we got after the fact was very, very large. I mean, it is quite a long video. It's like 17 minutes in total, I believe, from beginning to end, but it was like almost 23 gigabytes and above 200 Mbit. So it is very high quality footage. It's higher quality footage than, for example, my archive footage at its best is usually,
Yes.
Which says a lot. And I'm storing stuff, you know, long term at high quality for the purpose of comparisons. So it was very high quality. And that allows us to examine the IQ more. I think it was kind of obvious already over even the 4K 30 streams that we weren't looking at a particularly precise looking presentation. It didn't look 4K, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, it was tough to tell if that was just the stream quality or if it was compression, you know, with the stream quality, or if it actually was just a 4K 60 presentation, but it's actually rendering at like 1400p or 1200p or whatever.
And then when you had the asset right in front of us in high quality, you know, it kind of looks like what you'd see from a game that was targeting 1440p using upscaling, which, given the feature set that they're showing off here, makes a lot of sense. That would fall right in line with a lot of other current generation games that we've seen, like Alan Wake 2 or Avatar Frontiers of Pandora, or any of those games that have a 1440p 60 mode. And those tend to use upscaling.
Yeah.
It looked a lot like that, basically. Still, I would advise a little bit of caution about what we're seeing right here, just because they specifically call out the fact that it isn't Witcher 4 the game, but it's Witcher 4 the tech demo. So we're seeing things that won't...
Yeah, like that little animation where she puts both hands on the rock while squeezing through. Bet you good money that probably is not in the final game. Bet you good money that's probably not. Probably a single hand that's more general and generic, but I think like the very specific thing is not there. No 1080p 50. This ain't IGN. How dare you?
end up in the final game probably. We're also seeing probably a different level of polish because The Witcher 4 is going to be a large open world game. And it's going to have much more varying scenarios and varying levels of artist inspection for a very large open world.
Yeah.
And so you'd imagine that there'd be more variability of load potentially. There could also be less areas of polish. And specifically regarding the frame rate, just for the sake of it, I could tell by eye, but just for the sake of it, I ran it through our tools. It's flawless throughout. And there's one aspect of the demo that I may not end up being in the shipping version of The Witcher 4, and that is that camera cuts are actually played out flawlessly. A lot of Unreal Engine games, even really well-polished ones, will still drop a frame on camera cut because dynamic resolution can't tell you what's happening a frame ahead of time, and it sometimes is a bit too high res on a camera cut, and it has to drop because the frame goes over budget there, and you'll see like 33 to 50 millisecond frames in between camera cuts. And that's really typical to find in an Unreal Engine game, and even almost any game, actually. And sometimes...
Yeah, and you're not seeing any of that here. So they probably have some like very specific scripting for it. Real quick, just for people asking about how to become a member of the Discord, I'm posting a link in chats on Twitch and on YouTube, so you can follow those instructions. It is not a join link. You have to connect your account to Discord, just, so it's very, very clear. So just follow those instructions and you can join. Should be pretty easy.
Sometimes devs do it on purpose, like in Doom the Dark Ages, they hold on camera cuts, even on super high NPCs that are running at like 200 FPS, because they want their RTGI to propagate and denoise, so you don't get super raw cuts on camera. And here they actually play out flawlessly at 16.6 ms, which is beggars a little bit belief there. I'm curious how that happened. But as a result of that, you can see when the camera moves really quickly, or when there's camera cuts, you can see flaws in image quality. For example, lighting takes a bit, like when the coin flips, they show the coin on the ground and the lighting switches within the span of one frame to a different time of day, and Siri picks up that medallion or coin. You can see that the lighting there actually takes a while to propagate after the camera, after the time of day switches. Also, after camera cuts, you can see a lot of...
And this is why, like, some people were saying, oh, this whole thing is pre-rendered and stuff. It's like, if they're pre-rendering it, they don't tend to put a lot of flaws. If you're going to fake something, you fake it. At some point, faking the mistakes is more difficult than just doing it legitimate. It's just weird. It really doesn't need to be that complicated. But yeah, that's those little bitty things are like the little resolution problems. Those are indications that it's actually running in real time, because it's like they're not faking that.
Materials and textures loading in over like 5 to 10 frames, depending upon the scene. Same thing when the camera moves really quickly, you'll see stuff like that. There's also like low levels of anisotropic filtering throughout all the demo. There's a lot of stuff that says to me, based upon like the image quality and image quality flaws, yeah, this is definitely running in real time, and they're demoing it on something that isn't top-end kit. And if they say it's a PS5, I definitely am going to believe them there. So unlike what a lot of people maybe were a bit more skeptical online, I think my eye could see through it, and it looked very realistic.
Yeah. From my perspective, a couple of things. First of all, it's fine to point out these flaws simply because it kind of validates that this is the real deal, right? Which is something that people are bringing into doubt, which I think we're pretty happy that this is indeed running on a base PlayStation 5. And just the sort of general blurriness of it, the concept of running it at 60 frames per second means that necessarily there's going to need to be some kind of mitigation in place to make that happen. And running at a lower resolution, upscaling to 1440p kind of makes sense, right? So I think, it doesn't really detract from the scale of the achievement of what you're seeing, some of which we're going to quickly talk about now. But, for those that are sort of doubting, we really do think that take them at their word. This does seem to be running on a base PlayStation 5 there.
Geed says the German magazine GameStar saw the demo live in their office and it looks the same. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a real demo. I think like to really shut people up, you could just release it as like the Matrix demo. I understand it's not that simple because a lot of this was very particularly scripted in a way and set up in a way for the presentation, and people will try to get in there and, you know, data mine and look at the city more closely and take assets. So I understand it's not that simple, but still.
Of course, how it's all going to measure up to the final game remains to be seen. That's years off, right? Which I guess is why we've got that disclaimer in place that this is a demo, not the actual game. But let's talk key systems, because there's been some claims made which I think we need to discuss. Let's talk about ray tracing. Ray tracing at 60 frames per second, no less, which we would take to mean hardware lumen, right? Which for a console at 60 frames per second is extraordinary, I'd say.
Yeah, especially given the density of the world. In a game like Fortnite, you can see how the most recent season did allow that to occur even on base PlayStation 5, which they did update, by the way, to add in hardware RT to the base PS5 there in the latest season of Fortnite. Because, you know, if you look across that world, it's pretty scarce, and it's, you know, written around the ability to even run on stuff like Nintendo Switch or a phone, right? The density of the world is very different in comparison to a game like this, which is a lot higher. And on the blog, going in deeper into detail about Unreal Engine 5.6 features, they do talk about how hardware lumen has now been updated to be a lighter load on the CPU, regardless of how heavy it is on a GPU, which hardware lumen typically has been in the past, at least at the high preset within the engine, a bit heavier than software lumen on the GPU, but just because it's achieving much higher detail. The CPU burden was always much higher. I think I've measured in the past when I did like a 5.4 video, like 30% or even higher when just running through a scene, while CPU limited on PC. And it was a pretty big deal, obviously, because in a game, in an engine like this, especially an open world one, CPU is probably your main limiting factor. And that is the key kind of like breakaway technology from this demo, I would say. We've seen hardware ray tracing on the base consoles for UE5 extremely rarely. In fact, so rarely, other than the Matrix demo and the most recent season of Fortnite, I'm really struggling to see and think of any UE5 games that have really used it. And even then, the original target for hardware RT on consoles for Unreal Engine 5 was always 30 FPS. That original Matrix demo was targeting 30 FPS, and hardware RT was one of the reasons why. And here, seeing it running through an area with a bunch of vegetation, which is a typical pain point for RT, a lot of moving characters, for example. These are all pretty impressive things to see while running the hardware RT profile.
Well, and again, I can't stress enough just how crucial it is that they are from the start. We're still years out. I personally think we're probably 2.5-ish years out. I'm expecting like late 2027. It might slip and go towards 2028 and just be a full-on next-gen game or maybe cross-gen game. But I think we're still a long ways out. But seeing that very early on, they are already building things specifically with the target of 60 FPS. That's encouraging to me, because I think a lot of these games are really visually impressive, but they are being built with 30 FPS in mind. And then they reveal, they launch, and people are disappointed because they can't get to 60. And it's like, yeah, well, that's what happens. You know, they weren't designing it for it. It wasn't the goal. It wasn't the intention. So I think it's really good to see that from the start, they're trying to do that. And on the side of Epic Games, their goal is to continue to optimize the engine so that by the time this launches and other games launch on the same engine, the performance is not limited by the CPU as much as it is or has been in releases over the last few years. And if they can continue to make those optimizations, I mean, I think that's awesome. And it seems to be their main goal, because they said performance optimizations like 15,000 times in the showcase yesterday, and even the stuff they've been doing today. So it's definitely a point of priority for them.
Still, as I say that, the demo didn't give great clues as to how high fidelity this hardware RT is running on the PlayStation 5 here. And that isn't a slight or something like that when I say that. It's more like The demo has the camera moving really quickly with a lot of motion blur, and there's no great, it takes place in the world of The Witcher, which is medieval more or less, and so there's not a lot of glass and polished metals and things like that, where you can get a greater sense of the areas where RT needs to be skimped on for performance purposes. So I couldn't see, for example, if all the skin characters that they mentioned at one point are included in the ray tracing structure. I would imagine that for performance purposes, they probably wouldn't be to some extent or reduced in some way. I couldn't see like the way vegetation is handled in it. Couldn't see a lot of things, but there were still some screen space artifacts that were visible on the few bodies of water that were there, as well as some general lumen instability that could be seen in a couple scenes when the camera wasn't blazing through the landscape, where it was pretty hard to appreciate anything at that point. But I would say this is really impressive, and I'm stoked to see what it shakes out like in a final game with more variability, as well as presumably larger bodies of water, which is typically the pain point for Lumen RT.
Okay.
But this is also why it's really cool to see this partnership this early on, because I'm sure when they sat down with Epic, they were like, so here's what we want to do, and here are the problems with what you've got. This is what we need to improve. And then they could just sit down with like bodies of water, huge pain point right now, you need to fix that. And Epic goes, okay, yeah, no, you're right, let's work on it. And then they can spend 2-3 years working on fixing it and improving it. And I'm sure that's part of, the symbiotic relationship they have right now, because CDPR's engineers can help them work on fixes, but then Epic's engineers also are working on fixes, and they just try to come up with something that leaves everybody happy. So I think it makes sense. But again, I think one of the other pieces of this, I don't think CDPR would have revealed this if they had the choice, personally. I think if it were totally up to them, I think they would have stayed quiet for another year and a half, 2 years, and then they would have started showing it off. But I think that part of the deal with this partnership was that they needed to do tech demos. They needed to showcase the amazing technology of Unreal Engine. And this is how they did it. And this was part of that deal. So their way of getting around the high expectations that people are going to naturally have as a result of this is by saying, hey, it's just a technical presentation. It's not actual gameplay. So don't come at us in a year and be like, in the tech demo, you showed NPCs looking at the characters while she's riding the horse, or you saw NPCs going and talking and referencing her, but that's not in the final game. They can always just be like, it was a tech demo. It wasn't real. But still, I mean, it's very impressive, and they say it's built using the same assets, and so it should be fairly similar, at least in broad strokes. But either way, it's exciting. It gives you an image, gives you an idea, and it's certainly what they're trying to achieve with The Witcher 4. And in some cases, like we looked at the very beginning of this segment, some little bitty things that they showed with The Witcher 3 back in 2013, the final game looked significantly better than what they showed off initially. So there, people point to Cyberpunk, which of course is a total disaster, and nobody's going to deny that with that launch. But there's also examples of CDPR where they made improvements. Now, the one thing has been performance issues. Back to back, the one exception being Phantom Liberty, of course, I think was pretty well optimized, ran really well, and it needed to, frankly, after Cyberpunk. But that's going to be the big thing. And they know everybody's eyes are on them for The Witcher 4. They need optimization to be there. They need the game to perform well. And seeing them targeting base PS5 for optimizations is a really good sign, because they could have done this trailer, this tech demo rather. They could have done this and just not mention base PS5, just be like, this is a tech demo of what the Unreal Engine is capable of, and refuse to talk about the hardware, when in reality it's running on a 5090 and the PC it's running on is $5,000, and it's just totally unrealistic to see it. But instead, they chose to build it around the base PS5, which I think is a very good idea. Because they could have made it look even better with global illumination, fully, overdrive, ray trace, or whatever. Path tracing is the word I'm looking for. They could have path traced everything on a super high end PC and done crazy DLSS, whatever, with a PC build of it. But they didn't do that. And I think that's a good thing. Much better approach, I think. So Eric says, do graphics really matter though? I think for some games it's a component. I mean, people who are like graphics don't matter, it's the gameplay. I think that's overly reductive, because if that were true, people wouldn't care about graphics at all. I mean, I think some people might try to whittle it down, but people like games that look good. They like games that are immersive, especially certain types of games, whether they're narrative or adventure games. They like games that are pretty and are cool to look at. You know, you still need a good art style. You still need people that know what they're doing on the art side of things. Of course, you know, there's no shocker there, but I think you really need, you know, graphics are a great selling point, because you see a lot of people that just see a screenshot and they go, ooh, that looks cool. I want to find out more about that game. You know, I think it's natural. You know, graphics, I think, do matter. They're not like the deciding factor. It's not like the game is good, but the graphics aren't great, so I'm not interested. It doesn't matter that much. Like, you shouldn't disqualify a game just because the graphics are a little outdated or something. There's phenomenal games that are not technologically or graphically on par with the competition at that time. Like even Elden Ring, in terms of like what it's actually doing graphically, it's not that crazy. That game is held up by its art style and art direction, which is phenomenal, but still a phenomenal game, even though it's not like photorealistic or anything, which is okay, you know. And in this case, I think if they can nail the art style and also have phenomenal graphical fidelity, that's just, you know, banger. That's awesome. That's great. So Witcher 4 tech demo looks good. We'll see what happens when they reveal the actual game itself. We'll continue watching The Witcher 4 as we find out more about it, of course. You're not getting away that easy. And I'm sure I will be insufferable as they continue to reveal more. But until then, we'll just have to sit and dream. But what they showed off, I think, is really, really good. And if this is even just a broad, again, even if they can just get to like 80% of this, I'm happy. I'm happy. So we'll see. But next time when they reveal actual gameplay, I mean, maybe that's the thing for next year. Maybe next Unreal Fest or whatever, they actually show off like the game. You never know. You never know. So we'll have to see. He took my thing.